It is Election Day, and it's time to make your vote count. Voters in Virginia and Maryland are casting their ballots for key races across our region. If you haven't voted yet, you might want to get ready to do so. Polls close in Maryland at 8 tonight, and polls in Virginia close at 7. That's in just 3 hours. We've got a lot to bring you this afternoon. So glad you're with us. For WUSA 9 News at 4, I'm Adam Longo.
And I'm Simone D'Alba, and we wanted to begin with why this election matters to you and to your community. In Virginia, all 140 seats in the legislature are up for grabs. That's 100 seats in the House of Delegates, 40 in the state Senate. The Virginia State Senate is currently controlled by Democrats, but just barely. 22 seats are held by Dems, 17 by Republicans. There is one vacant seat. That's in the district that includes Richmond, which is heavily Democratic.
So essentially, Republicans would have to pick up 3 seats to take control of the chamber. Remember, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is a Republican, so she would have the tie-breaking vote if it came down to a 20-20 tie in the state Senate. Democrats can only afford to lose 2 seats here to retain power. Over on the other side, in the Virginia House of Delegates, Republicans are in control, but with a very slim margin. 48 seats to the Democrats' 46, and 6 seats are currently vacant. Now, 3 of those seats were vacated by Republicans, and 2 were vacated by Democrats, meaning we essentially have a 51-48 split in the Virginia House.
Control of the legislature means controlling the issues in the Commonwealth, everything from education to abortion.
Now, one person who would really like to see a Republican takeover of both sides of the state house, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. He has been touring the Commonwealth since yesterday, greeting voters and stumping for GOP candidates in places like Ashburn, Manassas, and Bristow, all before noon.
I've had 100 stops over this campaign. I've campaigned everywhere. We have really great candidates.
So there are a lot of people speculating about the possibility of Youngkin running for president here in 2024. We asked him about that. CBS asked him about that. Every reporter who follows Youngkin has asked him about that. He has ducked, dodged, and dived. What happens tonight, though, could have a big impact on what he decides.
Well, one Democrat who holds down a swing district in Virginia is Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. This morning, she issued a statement about the election. She says in part, quote, Virginians have the opportunity to elect Democrats who are focused on protecting our fundamental rights, lowering costs, keeping our communities safe, and supporting our public schools.
Now, overall, things have been smooth at most of the polling locations in Northern Virginia, but there have been a few issues. We got an update from Virginia's Board of Elections just a few hours ago, and they told us about a power outage issue that affected multiple precincts, notably in Arlington. Happened about an hour and a half this morning, where voters actually had to go outside, but things are there back to normal. Listen.
In Arlington County at 6:09 a.m., we were informed of a power outage at the Melwood precinct in South Arlington. They moved voting outside so that it could continue, and the power was restored by 7:45 a.m. In Roanoke County, the General Registrar's Office is without power. It has not affected any polling locations. Nothing has affected voting there, but the General Registrar's Office lost power due to a blown transformer. They are without power and without internet, so they are working to get generators moved in to help.
All right, so it sounds like if those are the worst things that happened today, Election Day is going to be all right. Things at the Roanoke office, we're told, are back to normal now. We were told in the last hour that power was restored without using those generators at 11:30 this morning.
Well, Virginia is one of 4 states with key races during this election. In Kentucky and Mississippi, there are tight battles for governor. In Ohio, key ballot measures include topics on abortion and marijuana legalization. There's a lot to talk about this afternoon.
Yeah, joining us right now is Karen Caifa with a larger outlook of why these decisions matter to you. Karen, good afternoon. Let's start with this. Voters in Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, Mississippi, all heading to the polls for these off-year elections. You know, we see President Biden with low approval ratings. So in terms of why these local elections matter, is there a lot of discussion about the implication they could have for next year's presidential contest?
Well, Adam, I spoke with 2 political science experts here in the D.C. area. David Barker is a professor of government at American University, and Karen Holt is a professor of political science at Virginia Tech. Both of them told me not to take too much stock in the actual results that happen here tonight. Election Day is still a long way away for 2024. I think you said it at the top of the broadcast, 363 days away, and the political cycle is moving rapidly. So what they are really zeroing in on tonight is the turnout. And this is something that we understand that the Biden campaign will be looking at tonight as well. The turnout, they are particularly interested in young voters and also voters of color. Are they coming out to the polls? What motivated them to vote in those elections, in particular in Virginia and Kentucky, where you have some of those swing state districts that could potentially make the difference, not only in a presidential campaign, but also what happens here on Capitol Hill next year. They're also going to be looking at who does not come out to the polls, what did not get people motivated enough to vote in this off-year election when you do have issues like abortion, reproductive rights at stake on the ballot. That's what they're going to be most interested in here tonight, Adam and Simone.
In the South, we're seeing two battles for governor play out, in Kentucky and in Mississippi. And for context here, it's been about 2 decades since Mississippi has even had a Democratic governor. So we're watching Republican incumbent Tate Reeves trying to hold on to the job there. What predictions do you have?
Well, this is a really interesting race in Ruby Red, Mississippi. This race is a little bit tighter, Simone, than the Republican incumbent Tate Reeves might like at this point. And that's because the Democrat Brandon Presley is running as a different kind of Democrat. He describes himself as a moderate, as a populist. He has very conservative views on issues like gun rights. He is also pro-life. So that is part of the appeal he is making to the state of Mississippi. He's also made an extended outreach to black voters in the state who make up about 40% of the electorate, because he says he does not want these voters and their votes to be taken for granted as a Democrat. The other thing he's running on is an expansion of health care. That's something that Tate Reeves have tried to pull back on in the state of Mississippi. So it could be very interesting. And you also mentioned that Kentucky race, the incumbent Andy Beshear, a Democrat, one of the few red state Democratic governors running up against the Commonwealth Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who's been endorsed by President Trump. Two very different politicians running for that Kentucky race. And again, you've got a lot of those swing state districts in that state that'll be interesting to watch in terms of turnout tonight, Simone.
Yeah, I think the fact that we have a Democratic candidate who is in the running even and worthy of mentioning in Mississippi is so interesting. Karen, ever since the fall of Roe v. Wade, abortion has been such a hot button issue for voters in Ohio. We're watching tonight to see whether voters are going to back abortion rights. In the past, we've seen other reliably Republican states like Kansas, overwhelmingly protect access to abortion. Are you getting a read on what's going on in Ohio and there's a larger message coming out of it?
Yeah, Adam, Ohio is the only state with a statewide ballot initiative on reproductive rights in 2023 in this off year. So last year, we saw a lot of these initiatives, and you mentioned a variety of states here: Kentucky, Kansas, Michigan, California, Vermont, voting in 2022. But they also had the momentum of the midterm elections behind them. Also, the Dobbs decision was very fresh in the minds of voters. So here we are 16 months out. Ohio, a very different kind of state politically. It's turned into a very different kind of state politically, turned a little bit more red, away from that bellwether that we used to see. So it will be interesting to see if the turnout is there for either side. Now, this is going to be really concerning for Democrats if they don't necessarily see the turnout they want on this issue. This was a major driver for them in 2022. They are hoping that it is something that can buoy them in 2024. Remember, this was something that was very successful Republicans in their races, trying to use this as an issue. So lots at stake here tonight for both parties to see how this will be a driver, especially for women voters heading into 2024, Adam.
All right, so much happening on a national stage playing out right in front of our eyes. Karen Caifa, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
You bet.